Take it away.
Hustlers.
The game is rigged, and it does not reward people who play by the rules. It's like robbing a bank, except you get the keys. Are you in?
So this is the new crime drama film by director Lorraine Scafaria, starring Constance Wu and Jennifer Lopez, as well as a slew of other kind of celebrity and medium celebrity people. Julia Stiles is in it as well. So this is based on a true story based on a New York Times or New York Magazine article about these hustlers at this kind of famous exotic club. Constance Wu plays Destiny, and at the beginning of the movie, she's the new girl in town. She's new at this big New York club. She's kind of doing okay, but she doesn't really know how to be a successful exotic dancer. She eventually befriends Jennifer Lopez's character named Ramona, who has this pretty incredible character introduction where she does a pole dancing routine that everyone's been talking about. It's a pretty incredible way to introduce a character. They meet, they hit it off well as friends. Jennifer Lopez is the kind of I don't want to say aged, is the experienced dancer.
You shouldn't say aged. No, don't.
Yeah. Oh, I need to say. Andy. She is. I mean, Jennifer Lopez is 50, and like she is. I know, like this incredible physique. Still, it's
cannot
amazing.
Tell in the film. Yeah, it's absurd.
So they hit it off as friends, and Jennifer Lopez's character begins to show Destiny the ropes, teach. I mean, things as basic as like this is how you pole dance, and also how you work the clientele, how you get the most money out of them, and they begin working together, and things are great. And this is taking place circa 2007, 2006. Things are really good. They're making loads of money. And then the financial crisis hits in 2008, and it hurts everyone. Half of Wall Street goes broke, and that means all these guys that were flooding the club are no longer there, and so they're having to get creative. And they begin actually going after these Wall Street guys. They call it fishing. They'll see if they try to spot them on a corner around a restaurant, try to get them to go for drinks, and that starts to work. And they eventually take this plan to another level, which crosses the boundary of being illegal or into illegal territory. And that's kind of the setup of the movie. And this was a big surprise. It's got a lot of heart. It's got really good performances from our main stars. And there's a whole lot that worked. And this movie really surprised me. But before we get too far into it, Zach, what'd you think?
I think Hustlers was definitely surprising. I will agree to that. For a handful of reasons. I think it's actually surprisingly well made. It's pretty well put together. It takes a lot of it makes a lot of artistic choices that are kind of creative and work for a movie like this. Like, it could have been so simple and boilerplate and 90-minute rush job movie, but like it's actually pretty well put together, and it's got some good acting in it. It's not too gratuitous on the dancing because I'm pretty sure this is a PG-13 film. And it shows. Not. Oh, really? It's R? Okay. Well, excuse me. It's light R. It's not too gratuitous, I don't think. I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it. I still think it has problems. But for what it's worth, let's talk about Hustlers. Andy, where do you want to kick this thing off?
So I just want to talk a little bit more about just my overall impression. I was really, really surprised. This movie, it looked okay at best to me. And it really works as a drama because it focuses on character. It's not like something like Magic Mike, or I was reminded of like the 1994 Demi Moore film Striptease, which was like a huge deal because it was like a major Hollywood actress playing a stripper, and it was that looks like a kid's movie compared to this in a lot of ways. But it has a lot of heart, and I think it's the focus on the characters. Like Constance Wu and Jennifer Lopez have really three-dimensional characters. They're people. They have problems. They have issues. They have goals, and that really works. And there's literal. I was hearing on some talk shows. There's Oscar buzz for Jennifer Lopez for this role, which may be stretching a little bit too far, but she is really good, as is Constance Wu.
Yeah, regarding roles, Jennifer Lawrence is fantastic in this film. She's really good. I was like, oh, wow, you're actually a really good fit for this movie. She plays this character really well, even the goofy accent. Like, it totally works. And she's got, like, this wild confidence that is, I think, reflected, of course, in who she is as a person, that she brings into the role. And, like, it really generates this feeling of, like, momentum for this character. She's very bold and confident, and she's very inspiring to our Constance Wu, right? Destiny, who is young and meek, and also, and I didn't know this, 37 years old? Which is old, like, because I would not have guessed she's 37.
Yeah, I thought she was like at least 10 years younger.
Yeah, I would have thought she was like 27. Yeah, so I'm not sure what that says about women in film. That's for a deeper conversation. But she plays this young, meek girl just trying to kind of figure it out and support her grandma and, trying to make her way through the world. And she gets tangled up with this Jennifer Lawrence character. And they're very much like
Jennifer
they have
Lopez.
a friendship. Who'd I say?
Lawrence.
Oh, excuse me, Jennifer Lopez. Jennifer Lopez character. And they start with like a friendship, right? And that's what this movie is really built on, is this friendship between these two women who obviously have problems and are stripping for a living, but like manage to find a place in the world because of it. And that's really neat. Like, and then the movie peels away from there. Then the plot is layered like an onion or like a wedding cake. And you start to discover, oh, there's something deeper here. And it turns out, oh, this is based on a true story. And maybe this is past tense and not actually happening now, but this is something somebody else is telling somebody. And like, it really starts to open up like a serial cop drama or something. And like, I thought that was really neat. I was like, oh, wow, this plot is like complex and interesting and going somewhere. And it's told in a charming way.
It really, I mean, I was reminded a lot of Goodfellas, actually, not to compare it too highly, but it was really because it was about the characters and it was about like the craft, whether illegal or illegal, right or wrong, it's about the craft of what they were doing. They were very serious about, they had found a way to make really good money and they turned it into a business, and it was very organized, and, they went from making $5,000-$6,000 a weekend to six figures a weekend. It was this kind of crazy story. Let's talk a little bit about structure. So Julia Stiles is in this movie and as a journalist, and so the movie actually starts, I think, in the current timeline, or like 2015 or so, and Constance Wu is no longer dancing. She looks like a very put together kind of mom, businesswoman, and she's being interviewed by Julia Stiles about everything that happened, and it's clear that they are no longer all friends. They have been busted, they've gotten caught, and then it jumps back to 2007, 2008, and kind of goes through the timeline of that. So it jumps back and forth a lot, and I really liked that it did. I thought it was a good kind of directorial decision.
Yeah, I did as well, and you mentioned Goodfellas, and it's worth mentioning in regards to how the film is made. This film, I think, is definitely inspired by that, so much so that like the opening shot of this movie, just like that scene in Goodfellas where our main characters are walking into the club from the street, and it's like one long take of like 4 minutes, and they like walk through the kitchen and stuff and go through the back way. This movie opens with a shot like that. It's like a 4-minute long take of Constance Wu getting ready to go out on the floor for like the first time at her new club gig. To walking out and seeing the whole club and the camera panning around all these Wall Street suits, watching women strip, and like this music and super loud light. Like it's really engaging, and it's very visually poppy because like you're in a strip club for a good portion of the movie. So there's lots of lights and things are covered in gold. Like it makes it a lot of fun to watch. And it keeps things moving along from scene to scene. So you're never getting too bored. It's always very high class, and very expensive. And that's engaging, I think.
Yeah, and at the beginning, the first act is when we have a lot of time in the club, and that's when actually most of like the nudity and gratuitous nudity is. But that's where we also see a lot of our famous faces. Cardi B is in this. Lizzo is in this. Some other people that I don't know, but that are apparently big names. People that some of you might recognize. We get a really good feel of what it's like, and not just to dance at the club, but to like be a working class people. Because I mean, these women are working. Like this is their job. This is how they're paying their bills. And they all, like I said, they're 3-dimensional characters. Jennifer Lopez and Constance Wu, both their characters have children in this that they're also looking after and looking to pay for and provide for. Yeah,
and I think that like that writing is another element of it that really keeps me going. It did feel a little long. I should start to lean into the negatives here before we get to recommendations. It did feel a little long, and I think the writing was a big part of that. But like, it's worth noting that our characters are becoming parents in this film. At least some of them are. They're having kids or having their kids growing up or losing a relationship with a father, but they're growing together. That's what's important. And like, as they grow and time moves on and we get these cuts back to reality and current time, where one of our characters is explaining exposition to a reporter as like, well, here's all this stuff that happened to me back then. You get this really interesting connection of like understanding why what they did was wrong, obviously the crimes they committed, but like why they did it, and it blurs that line of whether or not it was a good thing or a bad thing. And I think that's a tough thing for a lot of movies to do, right? Like have ambiguity in morals.
Right. So this is produced by Adam McKay, who of course made The Big Short. And one of the things that I keep seeing is apparently he's got a real thing about the 2008 financial crisis, and that's part of what this movie brings up. And there are a lot of dialogue and lines where Jennifer Lopez's character specifically is saying, we're ripping off these Wall Street guys because they ripped off America, they ripped off us, like, and none of them went to jail. So it's kind of like, two wrongs are justified to. That's kind of how they justify what they do.
Right. And I think so many good films do that, right? Like a good movie will make you question whether or not like what a character did was right or wrong, Like that's a tough thing for a movie to do. I would not expect that from a movie called Hustlers about strippers that comes out in 2019. It's worth mentioning that I did like that this movie is kind of a 1,000-yard view of the 2008 financial crisis. Like that is worth mentioning. I think of a movie like The Big Short that is all about it. In a lot of ways, this movie is not about the 2008 financial crisis, but it's part of what drives our characters to do what they do. And like, I think that was really charming. One more thing, I think I'm about wrapped up. Just to point out things that I thought didn't work in the movie. It does take some risks as far as like editing is concerned and lighting and color, but it makes a few choices in the soundtrack that I thought didn't fit. There's some scenes where the music is just too loud and you can't understand what characters are saying, which is weird. It's too long, I think. It could have been tighter. And I don't know. I thought the conclusion wasn't super satisfying. Sorry. Go ahead, Andy.
Right. No, I agree with it starts to drag in the third act, or like from the second into the third a little bit. I did really like some of the music choices because there's a lot of actual classical music in this, where there's and so it's really interesting because there's a part where there's like a pole dance sequence, but it's to like Chopin, and so it creates this completely different mood, and that's heard kind of throughout the film. The last thing I'll say is that this movie's really funny. It has lots of jokes. It has lots of. I don't think it's trying to be a comedy, but it definitely is. There's a running gag about someone who gets sick and kind of vomits every time like they get stressed out, and it kind of hits every time. But there were a lot of gags in this as well. I definitely laughed a lot.
Andy, any other thoughts for recommendations?
I think I'm ready to go.
I think I've got one, but I'll save it for recommendations. That's the way to go. That's the way to do this whole thing. Andy, would you recommend Hustlers?
Absolutely. This was a big surprise. It was a very good movie, very touching, very strong performances by our lead actors. Surprisingly deep film. It might sneak on my top 10. We'll see. And I mean, Jennifer Lopez and I think Constance Wu, could both possibly nab a Oscar nomination.
I would recommend it with caveats, and really my big caveat is, and this is going to make me sound like the patriarchy or something, but hear me out. My big caveat is I'm not sure exactly who this movie is made for. That's my one issue. I would recommend it. I'm not sure to recommend it, like who I should recommend it to, because if it's supposed to be for like, I don't know, people who are woke, like I would argue it doesn't necessarily go far enough and like really stating a message, right? Like in a lot of ways, I think ultimately it's trying to be kind of capitalism, there's people on the top who have money and there's people on the bottom that don't. The system is rigged. We have to cheat our way to get to the top. Like, in a lot of ways, I'm not, like, the lesson at its core, I'm not sure is
right
strong enough for me to say, well, this is for young women or this is for older women. And, like, I know the stripping will knock off a fair chunk of the audience because there's nudity in this film of both genders. So, like, I would recommend it, but I'm not sure who to recommend it to. So, if you've heard this review and you've thought, you know what? This is interesting to me. I was going to brush that movie off, but it's actually more than meets the eye, and I want to see what's going on in there. Check out Hustlers. It's for you. But for everybody else, I don't know what to tell you. It's a good movie.
Well, I think you bring up a good point. Content warning, there is quite a bit of nudity. Mm-hmm. There is exotic dancing in a strip club. Like, there's drug use. Like, those things are there.
Like, I think my mom would like the message of this movie, but, like, the journey to get there is just a little too much for her. Like,
yeah.
So, Mom, if you're listening, content warning, I guess. Watch out. Love you. That's Hustlers, I guess, right? Like, that's a fair critique, you think?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.